Are people getting value out of coming to this mastermind? That's the question to the room. Jesse, anyone who's new as part of our initiation, you have to tell us where you're from and whether or not you've read the book. So Jesse, you're here. You were here last time. I'm going to try my best to do that. Durga.
Hey, yes.
Hey,
So
see?
this is my first day here. I'm from London,
Yeah.
Ontario. So I was a Black Card University student, bronze.
Okay.
Rasna was my coach. So I did not go back to Black Card again. I finished my course and I graduated from it. So I moved on. I got my realtor license. So I left my IT job. So I'm a realtor in London and St. Thomas areas.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm
Have you read
currently
Hard Times?
Yes, I did not read it, but I listened to it on Audibles once. So I got inspired, and you know, it's been so long, like more than a year, I think I did. So I'm getting back today after joining this mastermind. I looked at chapter 8. I listened to that before coming here. So
Awesome.
yeah.
Yeah, chapter 8 wasn't super exciting. I'll be honest. Like we covered a lot of that last week, but we're going to get into it here. We got Sam Grola, Sergio Brock. Brock, I think this is your first time on the call. I could be wrong. I know Stefan for sure. Stefan, I'm not even going to try that last name. Trajkov, is that it?
Yeah.
Well, I know him. He's from Winnipeg. I don't know if he's listening or whether or not he's kicking around in the background, but essentially what we do on this call here is we're going to be going through Hard Times chapter by chapter. We're on chapter 8. Last week we did chapter 7. And for me, this mastermind is continuing to reinforce the fact that responsibility is and has been the key to happiness for a man. There's no real happiness when you're being irresponsible. Maybe momentarily, but true happiness, long-term happiness comes from maximum responsibility, handling all of the things in your life, being ahead of everything. And I was watching this reel the other day. It said stress is having something you know you can do that you need to do, but you're not doing. So if you're feeling stressed as a man, there's likely something that is within your control to take action on, and you're just not doing it. So my challenge to the guys in the call here this week is if you have something that's stressing you out, it's probably because you can do something about it and you're not. So do something about it. Remove that stress, because maximum responsibility, maximum happiness. But it's not going to happen right away. There's nothing exciting about paying your bills. But after the first of the month, you pay your bills. The first couple of days of the month before you start thinking about paying next month, they feel pretty good. If you're behind on rent, that feels terrible. If you're ahead on rent, that feels pretty good. And you can see the correlation between taking responsibility for the things that you agreed to, particularly paying your rent. I got this last week. I got the moving violation for not having insurance on my car. So now I got to call the court. I got to set the date, and I got to go to that court date and try to negotiate it down from $600 and something to maybe $500. And, don't play any games. I got to be responsible with and go to the court and say what it is. And before the call, we were talking a little bit about the industry of coaching. In the industry of life coaching or intellectual property coaching, or even in the business that you're in, if you are lying, you are being irresponsible with other people's decisions. If I'm wholesaling a property and I'm lying, I am being irresponsible to the people who are trusting that I'm saying what I need to say. And so having integrity isn't necessarily about yourself. It's actually that responsibility to others in what we say and do. And so in this industry, there is lying. There is people that are over exaggerating their wins. Oh, I did 1 million houses and I raised $1 billion. Like, probably not. So do your research, ask the hard questions of the people who are mentoring you. And if they have any sort of integrity and they're being a man about their life, then they should be telling you the honest truth, the ugly truth. Maybe it's good truth. Maybe the truth of the matter is that they have done 150 or 1,500 houses, or maybe they have raised close to $1 billion. But the reality is that we are in control of our tongues, and the integrity is our responsibility to each other in business. We were talking about this last week, and we were saying, okay, in Winnipeg, how many people are the movers and shakers? How many people are going to work for movers and shakers? So you got like maybe 1 million people here, okay? Of those 1 million people, how many of the men, because men have been put here to manipulate the physical realm. That's making deals, moving things, fixing things, building things, moving the pieces around. When you look at a city like Winnipeg, 1,000 people, let's say, how many of them are truly movers and shakers? How many of them are actually not employed? Maybe 1% of 1 million of the people in Winnipeg that are not taking direction, but giving direction. So that's where we want to strive to be. Now, that ultimately comes to responsibility. Now, in the last couple of weeks, we've had a handful of contractors and business people that are turning out to be out of integrity with what they're saying and doing. And so lasting business, lasting reputation, if you're a wholesaler or if you're a realtor or if you're someone who's in the sales business, integrity and what you say is entirely up to you and in your control. Don't abuse other people with a lack of integrity, because they're going to take action on the things that you say because you're in a position of value and trust. So guide people. It's irresponsible to guide people in the wrong direction. Even if for financial gain, short term, anything that is short term is an irresponsible move in that regard. Hooking up with a girl at the bar, that's a very short term thing. It is irresponsible, and it will have a very short impact on your happiness. Finding the right girl, taking her out properly, asking her father for her hand in marriage, doing the whole thing straight up, that has a lot of integrity and responsibility inherent in it. And that is likely going to have a lot more long-term happiness. So whenever we're thinking about responsibility, the shorter it is and the easier it is, the likely more irresponsible that particular move is. Now, that's not to say that a lot of short moves can't be responsible, but typically short-term gains are gotten through irresponsibility, where you're just like, white lies or bended truth or omission. That's us being irresponsible with our position in this world as men, moving the pieces around. If everyone is operating with integrity and every man is operating to a trueness, you can imagine what that could have, what kind of impact that could have in the day-to-day life for other people. No one's going around saying, oh, this person screwed me over. Oh, this person, owes me 10 grand. I feel like I deserve 10 grand because it didn't go the way. This contractor did the work and skimped and cut corners. And it's like, it adds up and it compounds. With the last thing with the black card empire here, we had a CEO sitting in a position that was irresponsible with the title, and now has cascaded irresponsibility down the chains. So people are not getting what they deserve, what they've paid for, because the former CEO was irresponsible with his position, with what he said, with what he did, with how he operated. And it's not just, it's easy to be irresponsible in the moment, but we must, as we become larger and larger characters in our own world and take on more and more responsibility, we take on more and more responsibility for others below us, because they're counting on us to keep the lights on, to keep the bills paid. And if we're irresponsible at the top, just in the last, I would say 20 or 30 days, we've had medium to small contracting companies going belly up. So how many people does that guy hire? Maybe he has 5 guys. Maybe he has 3 guys. Maybe he's got 10 people on his crew. But those 10 people are directly impacted by his lack of integrity as a leader. All the people he buys the material from, all the people who are counting on them to complete the job. You can see how irresponsibility can cascade across all of the people that are affected by it, and the people below it, and the people that are associated with those people. So don't be the person that's causing that cascade. It's easy to be drawn into that, but stay out of it, because it's just as easy to take it on as responsible. And one thing, if you're a business owner or a leader, that means that if your people underneath you are making mistakes, you have no opportunity, unless the expectations were very explicit and they crossed the line. You have no right to bear down on your employees and the people who are under you unless you've been explicit about the expectations. Because if they're failing and you're deferring that to the person who's failing, the failure is yours. Because had you done your job properly at the top, the people below you would have been supported. So if you're having failures below you in your team, in your admin team, in your contracting team, it's your fault. And it's much easier to take responsibility and deal with it as it's your fault, because then you are in control of that. If you're oh, I wish that guy did, I wish he worked harder, and why did he do that to my company, and why did he do? If you can put on a teenager's voice and whine about it, you can easily find that the responsibility is actually yours. If you're whining about whatever's happened, it's probably that you didn't do something, and it's now cascaded back to you. Irresponsibility for setting the expectations. You put a guy in a job, you didn't set him up to win, and now he's failing. And he's a crappy employee. No, you're a bad leader and a bad trainer. Start there. And if you've done that work and you've set the expectation and they fail to meet the expectation, then you have full reign to go in on it as if it's a problem. But if you haven't set an expectation, for instance, with a contractor, when I'm doing real estate flips, a lot of the failures in my renovation contracts are happening because I'm not setting expectations. But then I'm coming to the job site and I'm getting upset about things I wasn't explicit about. So that's like, well, why didn't you do it the way I wanted it to be done? I didn't actually tell you how I wanted it to be done explicitly. I trusted that you were going to use your judgment and somehow figure it out. But I can't be disappointed for things I didn't ask for explicitly. So if you're finding yourself in those situations, chances are you're being irresponsible. If you have more things to do in your life, peace for a man is when all the work is done. And if you have things that you're putting off, like shoveling the driveway, very easily. Oh, we got Manzoor with the background too. Hey, Manzoor, I'm just finishing up my monologue here. If you've got things in your life that you're deferring, you can easily look to a teenager and say, oh, he's not doing the dishes when I asked him to do it. Deferral of time, deferral of responsibility. If your house isn't in order, you're likely stressed. If you haven't handled the things you're supposed to handle, you're likely stressed. So if you want to be happy, you want to have a clear mind, a clear conscience, and you want to sleep well at night, handle your shit, all of it, until there's nothing left to deal with. So I've asked Manzoor here to come on and do the 20-minute in the middle here. Manzoor, are you there? You're on mute, bud. I like your outfit though. It's very
Can you hear me now?
hardcore. Yeah, I'm going to switch to speaker view so I can get the recording here.
Cool.
So we're going into chapter 8. I got my slick back hair today, and Manzoor is going to take it from here. How you doing tonight?
Assalamu alaikum, first of all, everyone. Alhamdulillah, I'm doing great. I'm running a bit late, just got back from Isha prayers. So, I mean, most of you who know me know I haven't really been religious for the last little while. Something I'm trying to get reconnected with, I guess you could say. It also ties in with hard times. I believe we're going to get into like religion down the road, right?
Mhm.
So, I mean, in terms of this, I got a little bit of stuff written down. So I'm just gonna start going through it. So we're talking about the importance of being strong and flexible, right? So I think before we can even get into that, we have to start with what does it mean to be strong, right? So being strong doesn't mean just like you go to the gym and you're lifting heavy things or you have a lot of like physical strength, right? That's not what we're talking about when we're talking about being strong. We're talking about having strength of the mind, strength of the heart, right? So it means being able to face your problems head on and not give up when things get hard, right? Perseverance, resilience, grit. So when you get knocked down 7 times, you're able to get up again at the 8th time, right? And strong people know that anything they want, they have to put in the time, right? So like a great example of this is people who do bodybuilding. These guys eat boiled chicken and like broccoli with no flavor all day, every day. Why? Because they're not eating for flavor, right? They're eating for nutrition. They have a set goal in mind, like I want to get a 6-pack or whatever. So I have to eat this certain way, right? So it's discipline. And people who are like, it's more common, like there's a stat, there's more millionaires than people with 6-packs, right? Why is that? Because like it takes a strong mind to like wake up at 5 in the morning and go to the gym and like hit the weights when you'd rather be sleeping, especially if you're living in Canada or somewhere where it's winter, right? You don't want to get out of bed at like 5 in the morning and go out and deal with a freaking snowstorm. So, I mean, that's the first part. Let's talk about though how it's important to be able to change, right? Because we're living in a society or a day and age right now where everything's changing, especially with technology, right? The world we're living in is drastically different than the world that our parents grew up in, right? We grew up with cell phones, internet, all this kind of stuff, right? Our parents didn't really know how to use this stuff. So when COVID hit, now everybody has to learn Zoom, right? Whereas like our generation, they already know what Zoom because they're using it in their day-to-day or in their business practices, right? So there's always going to be new technologies, there's always going to be new ideas, and there's always going to be finding new ways of doing things, right? So for example, you had MySpace, that was the 800-pound gorilla, and then Facebook came in and they're doing like a remix of MySpace, right? So you got to find a way to do things better than they're already being done, and you got to be willing to change at times. So you might have like in your mind that, oh, I got to flip this house, but now interest rates have gone up so much. You're like, oh, well, now I got to change my strategy, right? Maybe I'm going to do wholesaling now, or maybe I'm going to focus on buy and hold, right? You got to be willing to like adapt and change your mindset, I guess we'll call it, right? So how can you be both strong and flexible at the same time? How could you be both at once? Stefan says that bending instead of breaking is the key. So this means being strong enough to handle problems, but also adaptable enough to deal with new ones. It means not giving up when things get hard, but also being willing to try something new. That if what you're doing isn't working. So if what you're doing isn't working, be willing to switch lanes, you know? Yeah, literally, you know? So let's take a look at some people who show what it means to be strong and flexible. I think a great example of this is Elon Musk. He's known for coming up with new ideas and working hard to reach his goals. We can agree on this, right? He's built a number of successful businesses and he's changed a number of industries, but he's also known for being able to adapt to different situations, right? So Musk took a pay cut and he put more of his own money into Tesla when the company was having trouble making money. He's also known for being willing to change his plans when necessary. For example, when Tesla's original business model of selling expensive electric cars wasn't working, Musk changed the whole company's focus to making cheaper electric cars, which has turned out to be a successful strategy. So, I mean, when Tesla came out, you would never see them on the road because they're like 100 grand plus, right? Now, how many Teslas do you guys see around? I mean, maybe in Winnipeg, not as much, but like in Ottawa, you see a lot, right? Toronto, you see even more. Another great example is Steve Jobs. So he's known for having clear ideas and sticking to them, but he's also open to making changes when they were needed. For instance, when Apple's first iPhone wasn't selling as well as they expected, Jobs decided, okay, let's lower the price so more people can afford it. This choice helped them to make iPhone one of Apple's most successful products ever, right? So this is like the iPhone, I think it was like the SE or like the color iPhones that came out. So they made like an entry-level product so like more people would get into the brand, right? Whereas if they just said, oh no, we're just like a hi-fi bougie ass brand, only like we're gonna keep our prices expensive, it probably wouldn't be as relevant, you know? And a great example of not changing is BlackBerry. If BlackBerry adapted, like if they dropped the key 2 when the iPhone came out, BlackBerry would still be relevant in the game, right? I mean, they're still relevant in the software sense, but like hardware wise, it's finished. And BlackBerry used to be the king, right? So they didn't want to adapt, and look what happened. They got left behind in the past. So how can we make our life more like someone who is strong but flexible? So these are some suggestions. You got to develop your mind and your heart. This means you should be able to deal with stress and setbacks without giving up. It also means knowing what you want your life to be about and where you want it to go, right? So how many people can you think of that know where they're going, right? Countless people send me messages saying, hey, can you mentor me? Hey, can you coach me? Can you help me with this? And then I ask them, well, what do you want to do? And they don't know. And like that's like the biggest problem with most people, I think, is they don't know what they want. And like they're doing things that they feel they should do or what people told them they should do or whatever, right? That's not how life works. You got to decide what you want and then you got to go do it. It's not what somebody else thinks you should do or what you think you should do or what somebody told you to do, right? You got to decide for yourself what you want to do and then just go after it. So you got to be willing to try new things and looking at things from different points of view. Being open-minded will help you to adjust to new situations and find new ways to solve problems you didn't have before, right? So, I mean, anyone in real estate can probably speak to this. Like every single deal, you're gonna have some kind of unique problem, and you got to come up with a solution, right? That fits your budget, fits your time frame, resources, etc. Right? You got to be willing to change direction if you need to. If your current plan isn't working, don't be afraid to try something else. Sometimes taking a different path is the best way to reach your goals. So, I mean, I can give you guys a great example about this. In 2016, in one of our buildings, I decided, oh, I'm going to open this like barbershop / clothing store / event space, right? And like before I opened it, I had a hunch. I was like, wait, no, I'm wasting. This is not like a good idea. I shouldn't do this. And I should have realistically just cut my losses and been willing to like shift my plan, right? Instead, I listened to a few like my family members and friends, and they suggested that, oh, you know, like you had the idea, you already started, you might as well go about it. So I ended up setting it all up, and when it was all said and done, it lasted maybe 3 months, and I lost over $300,000. Right? Had I been willing to adapt and like change lanes, I could have saved myself 3 months of headache and $300,000, you know, and I would have been able to collect rent from the space. But that was like my inner desire, you know. I was like, oh, I'm gonna be a barber. I'm gonna have this cool ass like spot, like it's gonna be the spot in the city, you know. Mind you, had I tried to do that now, it probably would have worked. It was just 10 years too early, you know. But the key in this is like I knew at the beginning it was gonna not work out, and I still ended up doing it just to prove myself wrong, you know. Like, so don't let your ego take you down paths that you know you shouldn't go down. And then the last point is surround yourself with people who can help you. Having a strong support system can help you stay strong when things get hard, and they give you the direction and encouragement you need to do well, right? In the end, the key is to be strong and flexible, strong but flexible. So I think that's a great reason for attending this mastermind or taking part in other like book clubs or little group meetings of the minds, right? You gotta associate with people who are on the same kind of path as you, because you're gonna catch probably 100 L's for every win you to get, right? And like if you don't have the people on the same path as you, you're gonna give up. And like I'm sure you guys got people in your lives, you can see they started in a business or they tried to start a business and then they gave up, right? They didn't even last 5 years, 10 years, whatever. Um, yeah, so I mean, anyone who's in the group, I also posted this little blurb before with a few questions. So I mean, before we go into like the question round, I figure I might as well just review this as well, right? So the key points that Stefan talks about, rather than resisting change, accept it as an opportunity to learn and grow, develop a growth mindset, adopt a mindset in which challenges and failures are viewed as opportunities for growth and improvement. Develop your self-awareness, understand your own strengths and weaknesses, and be willing to change your approach depending on the circumstances. So I think that's a huge thing also. Like people are not very self-aware. Everyone's looking for answers outside of themselves. You have all the answers inside yourself. You don't need to go find some like monk or something to give you answers, right? Like you if you're looking for like real clarity, go pray, go try and get connected to God, right? Like the infinite knowledge. That's what Stephen used to call it. So I mean, definitely look inwards, try to be introspective. Like don't always be going out and partying and shit. Sometimes just sit in a room with your thoughts and like write it out, you know. Don't be afraid of being alone. So be open-minded, also listen to other people's perspectives and be open to new ideas and approaches, but be cautious about who you're taking advice from, right? What I like to say is don't take advice from anyone with bad hair. If they've got bad hair, they've got much bigger problems in their life, right? So don't take advice from these kind of people. Or like in the book Richest Man in Babylon, right? You don't want to take finance advice from a bricklayer. You got to go to the experts to get expert advice, right? So you also want to maintain focus on your goals while being flexible. While flexibility and adaptability are important, it's also critical to maintain focus on your goals and priorities. So if you've seen The Matrix, this is the lady in the red dress, right? Shiny object syndrome. And this is a huge problem for all entrepreneurs. We're trying to like, we believe we can take on the world and we can do everything, which is great. But like, you got to learn when to say no and when to say yes, right? Like, not every opportunity is going to be an opportunity. And something I picked up from like content that I've absorbed is when somebody gives you a good opportunity, but you know you have too much on your plate, you just tell them, hey, look, it's a good opportunity. It's just not a good opportunity for me. It's a good opportunity for you, you know, and let them go on their way. And resilience, the final point that Stefan mentions, resilience should be emphasized. Develop the resilience to recover from setbacks and continue forward, right? So, I mean, anyone who's done any kind of martial arts or tried to like go to the gym and like build their body or like build a business, even build a brand, get your band off the ground, like any of these things that require discipline, right? Like you're gonna need resilience because like shit's not gonna happen overnight. Like you're gonna have to do your 10 years. You're gonna have to start at the bottom. You gotta shovel shit. You gotta climb up the ladder. That's just the way the world works, right? Like, and I know a lot of young people are just like, oh, I want to be rich, famous, millionaire, whatever. Like, nobody's gonna take you seriously if you're under 30, first of all. Like, this is just a fact of life. Like, and I'm speaking from experience. Like, I've been in business pretty much my whole life. Like, my dad's been mentoring me. Like, I've been doing real estate since I could walk. But even then, people don't take me seriously because I'm under 30, right? Now things are gonna change because I'm old and I'm getting older, you know. But if you don't have the resilience, like I would have given it up years ago, you know. And yeah, I mean, anyone who wants to be an entrepreneur, you got to really develop that resilience. And I think like a great way to do that in terms of like building your spiritual resilience, your physical resilience, your mental resilience is start taking up a martial art. Like there's so much discipline and like life philosophy involved with that that like yeah, you're gonna get like the physical exercise, but like it's gonna change your whole life, in like the way you kind of go about life, right? So I mean, I believe the next phase of this call is questions and answers and stuff. So I wrote down a few questions I shared in the group also. So I'd be curious to hear if people have answers to these questions. I'm just gonna run them quickly, and then if Bryce, you want to take over after that, feel free. So question one, in your own life, how have you developed flexibility and adaptability? Question two, can you think of any examples of rigidity or inflexibility leading to failure? Number three, how do you strike a balance between being adaptable and remaining focused on your objectives? Number four, why is self-awareness such an important factor in adaptability? Number five, how can you develop a growth mindset? And number six, what are some strategies for overcoming setbacks and remaining resilient in difficult times? Thank you everyone for hearing me out. I hope I was able to provide some value. Bryce, ball's back to you.
Well, I saw John had his hand up. So John Simcoe, what is it? We were talking about resilience, I think, when you put your hand up. So jump on in. Where is it? John
It
Simcoe.
had a lot more to do with the like, if you're not 30,
I
we
like your
don't
hair, by the
believe
way. It's growing out.
It's just not gelled up. I've already showered twice today. But
Awesome. So go
anyways,
ahead.
so it was more about the like, if you're not 30, and it's very true. It's very hard to be credible when you are under 30. And so I used to also have a bit of a baby face at that age, even when I was over 30. And people would say, you didn't raise that capital, you didn't do those deals. There's
Yeah, I
local
mean, you still
property
look like you're
managers.
20, bro.
Well, I turned 40 just recently.
Yeah.
So
Mashallah, good genes.
and hey,
I said good genes.
yeah, that's those Ragnar genes, right? He's my great grandfather. So and so it's very hard for people to sometimes believe that, especially when they see a young face, even if you are older, that you've achieved something. But it takes a lot of time. And what people didn't see was the years of grinding it out and waking up early and staying up late and working extra on the business and saying no to the distractions that come your way. And even like Menzur said, a good opportunity could come. But if you're focused on something else, you need to maintain your focus. But as you grow and you cultivate, once you turn 30, suddenly all those things that you did during your 20s seem to all matter a lot more. And people start taking it seriously. That guy did it for 5 years, for 10 years, for more than that. And so I think that's very important to note. And I mean, even Manzur is getting it too. You know, he's not 30 yet, and people are giving him a hard
I'm
time.
30 now.
Yeah. Okay.
He's
Well,
now
like
ready. He's now
30 years
primed for it.
experience as well, which is
Mhm.
double me, right? So it just goes to show like where people may have different perceptions, and your experiences on a whole other level too. And so you can't always judge a book by its cover, but you do need to be skeptical of those fake gurus that are out there proclaiming to know the answer and have some system that you plug something in and magically you're rich. Like, I don't think so, bud. You're 20 years old, you still have acne, and I just don't believe it. Sorry, that's a rented Lamborghini, and I just don't believe it. Tell me some other life story, or you develop something in some other way. Don't just flash me some cash and tell me like I can have it too.
Yeah, unless the magic thing you're inputting is hard work, it's probably not going to work. It's probably not going to go. On that point, though, when I started in real estate, you see this beard, I've been rocking it since I started in real estate. Because when I shaved this face down and I had my hair like across my face like Justin Bieber, people would not take me seriously. And even when I was 30, 31, 32, 33, still in business, people wouldn't take me seriously. And I got Jacob in the chat here saying, what can I do if I'm under 30? And I watched this reel the other day and it said, if you're under 30, this is the point in your career when you need to hitch yourself to someone who is over 30 and learn. While you might want to become a business person in your 20s, and it's possible, the starting point, Jacob, and I think you're already working with some people, is I started smoking too. That did a number on
Yup.
that did a number. That'll age you, man. You want to age yourself, smoke a pack of cigarettes every day, and that'll You could
Yep.
also shave your head down completely. So it's like you have no hair. But take on someone who's in their 30s and 40s and work with them for a few years to figure out what it is that they're doing. And, you know, it's interesting. I was watching these, there was these interviews in the Black Card archives of these young sales guys applying for the sales position. And they lack the confidence in themselves. They don't believe they have what it takes. So like Menzer was saying, the mindset to be strong, resilient, and to do it is that you must primarily believe that you have what it takes. If you're faking it, it's going to show. The human mind and the human ear is very, very adapted to bullshit. It will find out. Like, I would always be recording rappers and they'd be in the studio and they'd be like, I got 100 grand in the bank. And at the end of the session, they can't fucking pay me. Like, no, you don't have 100 grand in the bank. And the record would sound like shit. Like, these guys would not sound believable because they do not have $20 to pay for the studio session. So just if you want to be credible under 30, Menzer has been in the music industry, he knows what it's about. But if you want to be credible under 30, don't
Just
fucking
forget
lie.
about it.
Don't pump your own tires up. Just be, you know, we got Carpenter Johnny. He's almost 30. What do you think it takes to be credible under 30?
Like I started business when I was 20 years old. Take action.
Is your mic on?
We were
Can't hear him.
okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, that's much better.
I started my career when I was 20 years old. And you know how I was taken seriously when I was 20 years old and I would shave my face and all that. Taking action, right? There's so many bullshit entrepreneurs that, well, not even entrepreneurs, entrepreneurs. There's so many bullshit people out there who don't do what they say they're going to do, right? And if you, and like we were talking about before, if you can be a person of integrity, like your word, keeping to your word is pretty much your personal brand. Have you ever experienced in your, like sometime in your career when you're dealing with people that somebody in business didn't do what they said they were going to do? And in your head, you were like, yeah, that person's a piece of shit. I don't want to do business with them again. I know that's pretty much all I have to say regarding the matter. But take action.
Yeah, we talked at the beginning a little bit about integrity, and I think that's huge. You know, like you can build quite a reputation when you're under 30 by just being the guy who did what he said he was going to do. You know, I think, and that's really the foundation of being a man, is like, if you do what it is that you say you're going to do, you're going to be treated with integrity. And if you're the type of guy, very quickly, you will be found out if you're the guy who says shit and doesn't do shit. So don't be that guy. Don't take advice from people who do that. And, you know, one thing that resonates is like, don't trade places, or rather don't take advice from people you wouldn't trade places with. But I think that reel that I was watching is very, very important, is that if you're worried about that strength and that integrity, follow someone who you believe has it. And there was another video I was watching. He said, courage is not something that you learn, but it's something that is transferred from person to person. So if you're not feeling courageous, you're not feeling that you can go out there, you need to find someone that can transfer that courage from you to them. And when I started working with Stefan Arnio, very courageous man, right into the thing, right into the fire, head first and everything. The shallow end might say no diving, and he's diving in. So this transfer of courage, find it, absorb it, and by the middle of your 20s towards 30, you'll figure it out. I didn't figure myself out until I was 27, and I only finally started making decisions for my life and my future when I turned 30. So don't put too much pressure on yourself if you're under 30. It's fine. Grow, experience, have integrity. Don't do bullshit. Don't waste your time, but find someone to work under until you're ready and you have that idea that is so exciting and so energizing that you're ready to strike out on your own. If you don't have your own idea, work for someone who does. And that's what I did when I was 30. I could have started when Stefan started, but I took him on when I was 30. I had two decisions. I either move to Vancouver or Toronto because I had outgrown the music industry in Winnipeg. So I could either move to Vancouver or Toronto, or, and just that night or that weekend, Stefan said, I'm looking for an acquisitions guy. And I said, I had two paths. I could either go into real estate and stay in this piece of shithole of a city, Winnipeg, or I could move my entire life and go out west or go out east. And I decided I kind of took the easy way out. I'm glad that I joined up, because people would always ask me, why do you hang around with Stefan? Why don't you just go and do your own thing? And I would always say, show me a faster horse in town for me to hook my carriage to. And they would be unable to answer the question. So find the fastest horse in town and be the number two. There's no shame in that, because the real power comes from doing what you say, following through with the things you took on as things that you said, okay, I'm going to handle that, and fucking handle it. So if you're under 30, find a fast horse and hitch up.
I just want to interject here real quick too. Am I muted? Can you hear me?
I can hear you just fine.
Cool. Yeah. So I mean, having been somebody who's like grown up in like an entrepreneur family and like trying to be an entrepreneur my whole life outside of the family business, one thing I can say is don't like there's no point to be in a rush, right? Like I was in such a rush for the last like 10 to 15 years that, oh, I got to make it on my own. I got to become somebody. I got to go make $1 million. I need to get followers or this, that, and the other thing, right? And just to like prove myself to the world that like, oh, I know business. Like it's like outside of whatever my family does, you know, like I'm capable on my own. And I did all these different little things trying to like get extra credibility, right? Like when I was 20 and I would show up to these like properties for viewings and shit, nobody would take me seriously. So then I went and got a Range Rover. Now I show up and I'm thinking, okay, people are taking me seriously. And I mean, it worked until like 5 minutes into the conversation, and they're like, well, how old are you? And then you got to tell them like, oh yeah, I'm like 20. Then, well, boom, there goes your credibility, right? Doesn't matter what car you're driving, what suit you're wearing, any of these things, right? So I think the best thing you can do is first get into a position where you're able to try doing multiple different little things, right? So I mean, probably the easiest way is what Bryce is saying: find somebody who you can just kind of latch on to and go along the ride, right?
Freaking John.
Right.
But yeah, like latching on to someone. Who is it that you were mentored under, Manzoor?
My dad, and
Yeah.
then Stefan,
Yep.
and then yeah, the universe, like people, books and shit, right? But I mean, the point being, like, there's literally no point to rush through this shit, right? Like, cool, I have like all this experience, and like now it's coming into play, right? Now that I've like crossed 30. So I mean, if you're under 30, just figure out like what skills you want, start building skills, build up your resume of like who you are and what you can do, and just fucking do it for 10 years without like wanting any recognition. And then by the time you're 30, now you have 10 years, 10,000 hours, and now you're an actual expert. And you can actually talk about shit, right? And then worry about these things. I think from like once you like graduate high school up until like 30, that's the time you have to like explore as many different things as possible and like start multiple different businesses. Like you're never going to be free working a job. So like if you can avoid that and like just go into a business that you can like buy or like buy into like via like seller financing or whatever, like some baby boomer who wants to retire, I'd say that's probably your best bet. And then like tap into their knowledge, right? And like you essentially bought a mentor and like you're getting it with the business. And I mean, people are always willing to like seller finance their businesses if they're like trying to retire. Because like if you fuck up, they're just gonna take over, right? So yeah, I mean that's all I wanted to say in regards to like if you're under 30, don't worry about it, dude. Just respect the grind, chill, put in the time. You know, you got to let time compound. You can't just like speed up the process of compounding.
Hey, so I also want to talk about mentorship. So, Bryce also said, find somebody who's older that can teach you stuff, but that should also be talked about, is that track record matters, right? And if somebody didn't have integrity in their career for like the longest time, are they really like the best mentor for you? Now, I want to be very specific, so I'm not going to mention any names, but the potential buyer for Black Card, me and him have a connection that goes back, say, like 8 years. We were both mentored by the same guy 10 years apart. Now, this isn't even about the guy who's buying. I want to talk about the mentor I had. And this is a guy who went bankrupt 3 times within a period of 18 years. And it appears the other guy he mentored also is following a similar pattern. And, you got to be careful that you don't, fall into the same, footsteps as somebody else that maybe you should have been, listening to. Right? There's some people, there's a lot of mentors out there that have experience, but maybe it's bad experience. And maybe it's not a lesson about what you should do. Maybe it's a lesson about what you don't do. And there is still a learning opportunity there, but from an arm's length distance. That's all I have to say.
Well, you have to take the good with the bad from each mentor as you go. I won't name names either. I had a very famous mentor, different than Stefan. And in fact, it was someone who Stefan idolized and wanted to be mentored by and was denied. And I was able to become this guy's right-hand man. And he was the fastest fish at the time. So I jumped on and went to learn as much as I could. People called me him, mini me, right? And
just
so,
tell us who it is, John. Just tell us who it is. I'm curious now.
I know who it is.
And so this gentleman went on to raise a lot of capital and run seminars and teach people how to raise capital, about $500 million. But not all of his deals worked out. When it came time to being accountable, he ran off to Mexico, where he's currently in Cabo doing the same thing from what I can tell. Okay. Which is unfortunate that that's the way the end was. I used to do seminars with him, speak on stage, sell my courses and products that I had created myself from his stage, split revenues. And I looked up to the guy, paid him for mentorship. I volunteered. I also, made revenue for the man throughout our relationship, good revenue. I could talk for an hour, make $100,000, and we'd split it 50-50. Stuff like that on a Friday afternoon when the audience is the worst, because I was the youngest up and comer guy, so I got the worst time slot, which is fair. I didn't care. I was given a bone, so I jumped on it. And so there's a lot of people from the mentoring group that we were in, and we're all very tight right now, even to this day, and we all still talk. And when it comes down to it, that it's one of them described it. She's very wise, and she said getting away from him was like a bad divorce. It was it needed to end. It needed to he ran off with a ton of people's money, or the deal lost money, wherever it happened, we don't know. But at the end of the day, when he ran off and it all ended, as much as we had our minds unlocked, learned bigger ways, bigger ideas. I thought bigger because of that man. I left my a 6-figure-a-year job in the oil sands from the teachings of that man, and asked him, said, help me get out of this job. And he said, I'll do that. And a couple of years later, I was. So it's not like it was a horrible thing the whole time. And he even left owing me some money as well at the end of the day, from actually investing in deals. When you invest with your mentor or your coach, maybe that's a faux pas to invest or ask your students for money. I know there's a lot of other ethical coaches out there that have that as a policy where they won't do that. But maybe that's a line that shouldn't be crossed. Or maybe if you're being asked by your mentor to do that, maybe you should question, why am I being mentored by this guy? So there's always,
can't he find some money somewhere else?
Well, yeah, and he has places, but nonetheless, you got to take the good lessons that you learned, because there was a huge upwards trajectory and momentum, and I was able to latch on, create my own identity a little bit from that quit my 9 to 5 job like 10 years ago. Well, there was like a different shift in 9 to 5, but you get the idea, and actually become an entrepreneur. And so I'm thankful for that. I'm not thankful for having been ripped off and stolen from, and the fact that I've been seen around the guy so many times that people call me asking what happened, and I actually have nothing to do. Never worked directly for the guy, did volunteering and mentoring, but I was never an employee, right? Like a big difference, right?
Yeah.
So
I do like what you have to say in regards to taking the good out of it and leaving the bad behind. You know, there's, God bless Stefan Arnio, but he wasn't a saint. And so you had to take the good and the bad, and, you know, he operated the way he operated, and I learned a lot. You know, I look back at my early businesses of the recording studio, and like, you know how there's like owner operator in the recording studio. I was simply the operator, because I don't recall ever even marketing. I don't have no idea how to was sales funnel, sales process, closing scripts. Like none of those things were really, you know, a foundational piece. So back to kind of the under 30 idea, learn to sell, learn to market, learn from people who are selling effectively in marketing, because those are the probably the biggest failures in your first business, is going to be that you have no idea how to collect money, and you have no idea how to get clients towards you so that you can start collecting money from them. Everyone knows how to do, you know, if you're a mechanic and you're like, I'm going to start my own mechanic shop. Okay, so you know how to operate. Do you know how to be an owner? And the owner is someone who's the other hats, who's filling the pipeline with deals, who's going to put on a presentation, who is actually going to collect the money. And, you know, I always say, you know, after running the record label for a bit, if I had a second chance with what I know today to run that thing properly, it would have been a far different result, because I didn't know a thing about business. Nobody did, but sure as hell we knew how to make music. And that was it. That's all we knew was to make the product. We had absolutely no sales and marketing team. So if you're under 30, learn how to sell and learn how to market, because anyone can learn how to do, and you probably already know how to do. But if you don't know how to sell and you don't know how to market, it's not a business. You're just an operator. So we're kind of coming up at the top. We could go on endlessly with these calls, but as usual, it's the same bad time, same bad channel. I think we're gonna give Manzoor another run at the title shot here in the middle thing with a racy. We got a racy cover art. Whoa, what is this? What does it mean to be a man? Jack and the Beanstalk,
Interesting.
the fable of becoming a man. So this chapter
This is a good one.
is, yeah, he's climbing the woman. That's the, I guess there's probably some story in here. I haven't read this book in a while, but you know, I'm getting a lot. This mastermind being a weekly thing has really refocused my consciousness on what it means to be a man. And it keeps ringing over and over. The bell keeps ringing that if you're being irresponsible with your girlfriend's feelings, with your parents' money, with your friends' time, with other people's money, with your bills, with your car, that's not manly. Straighten up, take responsibility for all the things. Because if you're waiting around for your girlfriend to do the dishes, just fucking do the dishes. But do not walk around the house like you did the fucking dishes. Because guess what? Being a man is doing the work and shutting the fuck up about it. Do not walk around the house like proud that you did the dishes. She does the dishes all fucking week, bro. Like, because you did it one time, congratulations. Just silent reward. And the reward is that everything is handled. And the peace and joy comes from ultimate responsibility. And that doesn't mean bragging about the responsible shit you did. It means doing it selflessly and moving on with your life so that you have no problems. Because you look at the old man on the porch who's retired, he's got his shit figured out. His long-term wife, everything in his life, and he's smiling and he's sitting on the porch. He finally achieved the moment where he has nothing else to fucking do. So get there earlier in your life and you will find the satisfaction that drugs, women, alcohol, and these short-term things are allowing you to escape from your problems for a moment. But when you sober up every damn time, guess what? Your bills aren't paid. You have less money. You have less energy. You've got some girl in your bed that may or may not be worthwhile. Like, this is all nonsense. John's putting his hands up like, hey, I you live in that apartment. I didn't put you in that apartment. That's your own deal. That's Vegas over there. But responsibility means doing this stuff and looking for no appreciation for it. If you're waiting for someone to celebrate every victory, go talk to your mom. She'll celebrate every damn thing you do. But don't ask me about it, because I'll be like, congratulations, you paid your bills on time. All right. You did what you were supposed to do. Congratulations. You're not costing other people money or time. Chapter 9. Mansoor is going to do 20 minutes. I'm going to do my opening 20 minutes, and then we're going to open up the board. As always, Wednesday, 7 o'clock Central Standard Time.